All right. So let's continue from where we left in the morning. We have completed the second session, and now we'll start a new topic, which is basically the technical competency framework, right? So what we are trying to do is we are trying to scaffold the the core activity that we are supposed to do in this course is managing the development center. For that, we are trying to build the case in terms of understanding what are competencies, what is competence, then what are the frameworks available, and how do you prepare the competence statements and things like that. Now we have come to a stage where we will be able to discuss on technical competency framework, and here we will be reflecting on the EDDI model. I'm sure all of you are aware of it. Are you aware of EDDI model? Have you studied that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So how do you integrate that with the technical competency framework? And there's a case study, which I don't know whether you have studied or not. Otherwise, I will show it on the screen. It's a small case study, and we will discuss based on your inputs. So competency is basically knowledge, skills, attributes, and behavior needed to perform tasks successfully or efficiently in any organizational setting. So, what are technical competencies? We discussed in the previous session. Technical competency or functional competency framework is important for role holders, particularly the job you are holding, for performing in the job successfully. Right? So, it involves basically two components: the behavioral competencies and the technical competencies. Our focus is more on the technical part, but the behavioral competencies include basically the kind of soft skills that we talk about, your punctuality, your ability to supervise, how good a motivator you are, how courteous you are, your interpersonal skills and all that. But the technical competency is related to your job knowledge, what you actually are expected to perform on your job. So it can include any job related problem solving, analytical skills, whatever goes with the job, depending on whether you are in HR, operations, marketing, finance, stores, IT, whatever the job that you're holding, what kind of technical competencies go with the job. That is what is the scope of it. So here is a small case study. I don't know whether you had a chance to read that. Did you read, any one of you? So
You want me
I
to read it out?
Yeah, what we'll do is I'll show it on the screen, and all of you can read it. It's much easier. So I will stop the screen and I'll change the screen to something else. So this is the case study that is there in your study material. So you can read this. Once we are done with that, you let me know. We'll stop the screen and we'll go back to the discussion. Are you done? So
Yes,
shall I go back? Yeah.
yeah.
So shall I go back to the PPT and then
Yes,
we'll
sir.
start the discussion.
Sir, can you please share this file as well on the chat box?
This one, the Word
Yeah.
document.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll do that. So, where is this? Yeah, I've shared it. You can open it. All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So, since you've already read it now, so can we start the discussion?
Yes, sir. We can.
So, what are the key challenges that you can make out from this case study?
Okay. Sir, the customer retention was falling out. So that's how we can put it up.
Sorry, come again.
So the customer retention was falling out.
Okay, yeah.
The marketing and awareness was not turning out to be in an expected manner.
Mhm.
Brand awareness was not being like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's,
yeah. Can
So
someone else step in?
there was a dip in market share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that. So three issues were identified. One was um, a dip in market share. The second was related to customer centricity. And the
Mhm.
third was with respect to brand and its reputation, which took a dip
Okay.
as well.
Okay. So, so how do you handle this kind of a situation if you are in that position? What is the way forward?
So this is something similar to, what I've been doing in my industry.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
interesting. Yeah.
way forward would be, um, a training program on customer service and customer commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I would also look at, changing performance metrics and linking it to performance-based incentives rather
Mm-hmm.
than keeping it transactional.
Okay.
So these metrics, which are transactional right now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they're transactional. I'll try and I'll link that to performance-based incentives. So say, for
Okay.
example, instead of a transaction like, what's the sales volume, I
Mm-hmm.
would make it into something like, what is the customer satisfaction score? So I'll change those metrics.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
The third could be with reference to culture, and communication as well.
Okay. How many of you agree with what
So what I'm
Mr.
talking about here is, customer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. I think that's a good starting point. Let's continue with the others' participation. Yeah, Shivani ji.
Sir, one more thing in addition to what Rohit sir has said, completely agree to what he has said, but sir, I think so we also need to map the gap from the market. So that can be only done with the customer feedback or maybe the scores if we can get it. And then if we are developing any kind of competencies or any kind of mapping, which is also given in the case studies that the HR manager, I think so Samir is also doing using ADDIE. I think so that gap analysis also should be done.
Okay. What is Adi?
Analyzing, designing, developing, implementation, and evaluation. So, in the first step, only when we are analyzing the gap, it can be through NPS scores or customer feedback or a larger scale survey to understand where it is going wrong, why people are not understanding or liking the offering by the organization.
Okay. And then after that, what do you do?
So after that, we study the gap and then we try to design the intervention. If there is a training intervention, then we will try to do that. We'll design it, not we'll implement it. We'll design it. What kind of resources we have in hand. We'll also try to tag the right kind of talents. We also will try to understand if there's any change required to, let's say, on the strategy level as well. So those interventions will also be designed, not developed.
Okay. Can we identify what are the possible reasons why the market share is falling, customer satisfaction index is falling, and the brand recall is also falling? And the brand recall falling is a very serious concern,
Hmm.
right? Now, what kind of framework will work help us in this?
So thinking, give me 2 minutes.
Yeah. While she is thinking about it, others also can chip in and contribute. Yeah.
I think you would require, first things first, you would require an exercise on root cause analysis.
Okay. Good thought. Yeah.
From root cause analysis, we'd be able to identify the exact points for the three key failures. Why is the market share falling? Is it related? Is the customer service satisfaction index related to the falling market share? Is there a correlation amongst the 3 points or the three weaknesses? So the data has to be analyzed, look at correlations, and from there, we could then make decisions. The decisions primarily would be made on the findings which we discovered. Most likely, agents or uh, employees are not trained enough to handle customer queries properly, or they are not aware of the product. And to effectively, convert offerings into revenue share. Again, like when we spoke about customer-centric issues, we're talking about like, a leaky bucket. There is poor retention, there's poor loyalty, which is directly correlated with market share and growth.
Okay.
So, and
Okay.
again, if there is a dip in brand recall, which could be anything, it could be marketing, advertising, overall customer experience, all of these are falling. They're failing to build a strong, memorable and trusted.
Okay. Is there a common thread across the three? Falling market share, customer satisfaction index falling, and the brand recall falling. What could be the possible single thread across all the three?
So is it possible that the marketing, because it was written in the case study as well, that the marketing which they're doing versus the actual customer experience when it is happening, it is not being the same. Hence, bad word of mouth is also going forward. So that's why it's falling the market share and CSATs as well, and the brand recall as well over the period of time.
Okay. Okay. Right. So basically, I think let us look at this case as something which we'll talk about when your market is falling. In terms of the share, your share in the market is falling and your brand recall is also coming down and customer satisfaction index is also coming down. Does it somewhere point to the product or the services that you're manufacturing or
Yes, sir, very much
selling,
possible. Might be possible
right?
because it might be possible that it was a very good product in past, but it is not serving the VUCA or maybe any kind of change which is happening in the surroundings. It might be possible, sir.
Right. So it is quite possible that there is something to do with the product itself, or in this case, since it's a financial business, so it's something to do with the service that they're offering, right? So it is something to do with the technical aspects of the product that they're offering, a service they're offering to the customers, and therefore this guy has thought about conducting a technical competency framework based analysis. And how does he do it? What goes into it is what we're going to discuss now. Okay. Now, since you have already said what is AD, AD is basically analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation. Now, quite often we do this in the industry, but we don't do enough of pre-training effort that goes in. Often our problem in industry is the diagnosis of the problem is not completely done. Uh, it is done on a hunch basis or somebody, some boss asks us, therefore we do it, things like that. But then it is not a well informed, well thought out, well diagnosed problem that we address. But if on all the three parameters that we talked about, the brand recall, the customer satisfaction index, market share is falling, something serious, you will try initially with all that you've been talking about, but if it is persistently happening, the problem is much more deep rooted, and that is what I think. Mr. Rohit said you should go for the deep, the root cause analysis, right? So that a framework for that is what gives you is understood in the technical competency framework. First, you do the analysis, what's happening, then trying to identify the actual problem, design a training program, develop the program, implement it, and evaluation. That is the theoretical model for any good training. So, in this case, what are the things that would have gone wrong, or what is the analysis in this? You can just read it, and then we'll engage in the discussion. Further. So you have the role of sales manager, credit manager, and collections manager, sales executive, right? All these things we'll talk about, and we'll talk about the levels of the training and all that. So just go through this analysis first, and let us start engaging in the discussion.
सोफे पे बैठा सोफे पे गए थे वही लगी हुई है सोफे पे चली ना बाहर
So done reading.
Okay. Yeah. Then we have the collections manager. Done.
Yes, sir. Done.
Okay,
Yes.
now you come to, okay, we have done the part of the analysis now. Now come to the
Right.
design. I think this is where the key, inputs are given as far as the technical competency framework is concerned. So what you do is there are different levels of proficiency, and all people in the organization at the same in the same role will not be equally, proficient in that. Therefore, when you do this technical competency framework, you will divide that into three levels: the beginner, the intermediate, advanced, and expert. So these levels have been designed, and at each level, the inputs required, the proficiency required will be different for the technical competency frameworks. So just read the sales executive profile, and, and then we'll go into what is design beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert. And you're just creating different levels of training so that people who are in that cluster can go through the next level of training inputs, right?
So one new thing to learn for me, if the case is concerned, is that mostly we as training people we use ADDIE from the perspective of gap analysis. But here, when this analysis is given, it is more of about what does one person does. It's more of a KRA of one particular position. So we have done the analysis of everything. Am I right, sir?
I think let's wait for one or two slides more, then we'll come back to this.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, so let's see the next one. So at development stage, what you're trying to do is you're actually looking at the four different levels of training inputs. So example, for the sales department, the four roles were defined as sales executive, sales manager, regional manager, and business head. Right? For each of these levels, the technical competencies were brought into one document, and there was a gradation system that he put down for each of these roles. Who's that? The HR manager, right? Now, what is the purpose of this? To tackle those three problems. The problems are related to business, but the solution comes from the technical competencies being built. And for that, you need to do the analysis of the roles that are there in that particular job. And for each of these roles, you'll have to create those four levels of training, and then you have to integrate. Now, you get a picture here. Let's look at the functional competency for credit policy underwriting. Okay. Now, just read this. If you read this and understand, then I can take your questions so that you are in a position to explain that. Oh,
That's it. Right.
yeah. Can somebody explain this so that I will know whether you are able to,
So what I could understand is that earlier we were designing the technical part of it. Now it's more of about what skill they need to be able to perform this role.
Mm-hmm. Can
Yeah.
anyone try? Anyone else also try?
Sorry, it's clearer defining
Yep. So
uh, the what they perform at different levels, as I said, as executive, as a sales manager, and HOD. Uh,
Okay. 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 Good.
and to perform the task, what they need. Okay, it's clearly defined. So, what knowledge should they should have? That is defined clearly, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. That's very nice. And Mr. Rohit, you wanted to say something?
no, so looking at this,
Mm-hmm.
it simply talks about what KSAs are required for a particular role, and then at what level it's required,
Correct. Correct.
right? And that's how it's broken: beginner, intermediate, advanced. So,
Yeah. Now,
say if I'm a sales executive and I need to understand the credit process, I'll be at a beginner level. But if I'm a
yep.
manager, I might be at an advanced or an expert level for that same competency.
Correct. Now, does it answer your question, Shivani ji? Earlier, you
Yes, sir.
wanted to ask some question related to ADDIE and how does it transform into a competency framework. Now, in competency framework, what you are looking at is you are documenting the competencies and you are also specifying what are the proficiency levels and how do these competencies change from one level to the other level, right? So in the
Okay.
first level, understands the credit policies, underwriting procedures during, including organization requirements and statutory regulations. This is more of a knowledge-based, competency. So at the beginner level, you must have a thorough understanding of that. But when you come to the intermediate level, you're not having that knowledge component here. You are saying able to recommend changes in the credit policies and underwriting mechanisms based on understanding of the market conditions and economic scenarios. That means your application and the understanding from the market related to this and your ability to make changes or recommend changes is what is expected at the intermediate level. And in the advanced level, you are able to design new policies and processes. So as your level goes up, but the competency level also changes and your contribution to the organization increases. And at the expert level, you are able to take decisions on credit policies, underwriting mechanisms based on the risk and business strategy of the organization. So this is how it is. The levels are earlier defined. This framework was missing in the previous, whatever the knowledge levels that we have. The AD model is integrated into technical competency framework here. AD model serves some purpose, but if you are stopping there, that may not give you the solution to certain problems which we have faced in this particular case study. So this is a more sophisticated and advanced way of looking at it. So here, for example, FC 1.2, able to execute, monitor all necessary processes related to credit and underwriting as per organization guidelines. There is a process ability, right? Now, if you go to a loan to a bank, how does the manager, loan disbursement officer there take your applications, process the applications? That processability is required at the beginner level, right? But at the next level, able to guide team members to assess the comprehensive credit worthiness. So at the next level, at the intermediate level, you already have the basic understanding of the documentation, but here you are trying to, guide your team or mentor your team on assessing the risk and how you go about the financial documentation. This is a higher level skill compared to the beginner level skill. If you are able to understand these, probably in your exams, if you get a case study like this, a page or a page and a half, then you will have to do the analysis whatever is written in the four previous slides. For each role, you have to make an assumption of those rules. You have to say that these are the rules I'm assuming, these are the competencies required for each of these are the key deliverables for each role, and from there I'm using the technical competency or the functional competency framework. These are the four levels of competencies. This is how they change from one level to the other level. You should be able to answer that. If you are able to understand that and decipher these competencies, that serves the purpose from your examination point of view. But in terms of application, if you want to apply this in your organization, you require a little more deeper understanding of it. But then I think it's good enough for you to go into that kind of a deeper analysis and using it in your own organizational requirements. Okay. Anyone else has any question? Pratibha ji, are you okay?
Sir,
Yeah.
Purushottam here.
Yeah,
Purushottam here, sir.
now tell me.
Yeah, sir, by using this one, we can do gap analysis also, right?
Yes,
In next,
if there are some people in those roles and this is what you are expecting them to do, and if when actually they are unable to do, then you are able to assess the gap. That is why this organization is a problem. So if the moment you create the competency framework and you have the competencies mapped by for the people who are there in those respective teams with these competencies, and you can arrive at the gaps, and when the gaps are known, which are the gaps which you need to immediately address, those areas you have to send them for the L&D, the training programs.
yes, sir.
This is not really benchmarking. You're not really benchmarking. Benchmarking is slightly different. Benchmarking is you take a particular uh, process or a parameter, see who is doing the best in the either in the same industry or in any other industry, and your performance is suppose the benchmarking for, let us say, uh, you have any particular parameter in mind, Shivani ji? When you say benchmarking, you have anything from your organization? Well, let's say, okay, HR, the common thing these days, which is being talked about, is the attrition rate. Let's say attrition rate for a company is 15% at the moment, and the best industry in your industry, the best attrition rate, that means the least attrition rate is, let us say, 6%. Okay, you have 15% attrition, and the 6% is the benchmark for the industry. Unfortunately, your company is having higher attrition rate compared to the others, right? Then what are the factors that are leading to this additional attrition? You are higher by, let us say, 9% or 8%, whatever the percentage. Then you have to investigate into the reasons for the attrition and find out what can be done by the organization to address those concerns. That is benchmarking from your either peers or from anyone else. It need not necessarily be from the same industry, from anybody else. That is different. But here you are relating to a role's performance. If you want to perform as a beginner in this particular company, in this particular role, you require these competencies. Without these competencies, you cannot do. This is what it is. Without this competency in that particular role, the beginner's role, you will not be able to perform. If I don't have, then I should be trained. See, this is typically happens. I will tell you an example. We send students for the internships and all. In a certain instance, one guy was sent to Hindustan HCL, Hindustan Computers Limited, and this person somehow did not think that he is a marketing kind of a person. His perception or self concept is, I am not fit for marketing. I can't do marketing. Well, then most of the people who are taken by the companies for the internships are all put into sales jobs because that is what the company wants. They want to push up their sales. So this guy, despite his no liking for sales and all, he was asked to get into HCL sales, and he was told to sell laptops, right? And he found it extremely difficult. He could not uh, succeed even selling in one computer in the first 1 month. So he obviously lacked the sales skills in the very beginning, being a student, not liking the mindset is, I don't fit for this job role is his mindset. So he was fortunate to have a good company mentor. So he understood his weakness. He took him around. He made him to witness some of the deals that he has done, some negotiations he has done, some calls that he has done. He was associated with him for a few days, and then he understood that he's actually capable. The mentor actually made him believe that he's indeed capable of being a sales guy, and he has made him to understand the sales processes, which is basically at the beginner level. For a beginner, what are the sales, when you do a sales call, what are the competencies required? The product knowledge, the soft skills knowledge, the technical knowledge, whatever is required, he has given those beginner skills. And believe me, within 3 months, this guy was the highest sales grosser in his cohort, in his batch. And he was eventually offered a job in marketing, which he has actually taken. So in 3 months, there is a huge change in a person. It is because he was able to find a mentor, fortunate enough to, teach him what are the beginner level competencies required for a sales job, right? And of course, after that, I've not tracked him, but I'm sure he must have been doing well. So this approach of competency based training is different, and benchmarking is different. Benchmarking also can lead to some training. Suppose in your production process, your rejection rate is, say, let us say 2%, whereas the industry standard is 0.5%. Then there's a 1.5% loss you are suffering in your industry. Then how do you benchmark your processes? How do you is it because related to raw material, machinery, the technical skills of the employees working in that? Well, what exactly is going wrong, you'll have to find out and put the workers or the people who are doing the job in those respective training programs. That is how it happens. Okay, are we done with that? Okay, fine. So we'll move
Thank you, sir.
forward.
Sir, here to define these functional companies is we need a proper job role for
Of
different
course,
level.
yes. Of course,
Okay.
yes. Of course, yes.
So
See, for example, I am a teacher. Let's say I'm a professor in a university. Obviously, I should have a clear definition of what my job role is. And
okay,
then
sir.
that defines what kind of competencies are required for the job role. I must be good at communication skills. My what the generic competencies or the basic competencies required will be, I should be good at communication skills, good at emotional skills, good at interpersonal skills, good at being punctual, and all those things that come with the teacher job. My functional skills will be functional competencies. I should be good at my subject knowledge. I should be good at the pedagogies that go along with the subject matter. I should be good at question paper setting. I should be good at evaluation, all those things.
Okay, sir. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right. Okay, then this is the next role: customer acquisition and relationship management. These are the competencies required. Again, here you've got beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert. And sales strategy planning and implementation. These are the different skills. So I think I'll pause here and then let you go through this. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
I've posted a question in the chat.
Well, let me see that. Okay. What is that? Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, you cannot go for competency-based training unless you assess the competency gap, right? Now, to assess the competency gap, you need two things. First, you require the job-related or role-related competencies, the set of defined competencies, and the individual competencies that the person possesses, and then make a comparison and see what is the gap that is existing. Only based on that you can give the prepare the individual development plan. Does it answer your question? All right, so we'll move forward.
So what is VOC data?
Sorry.
I have a
Uh,
question.
what is
Yeah.
VOC data? यहाँ पे on the third column it is given.
Okay, we'll come to that. Yeah. What is the question? Yeah. Yeah. Please ask the
Okay,
question.
so ideally,
Uh,
ideally, how many competencies should a role have? 7 to 10, 10 to 12, 10 to 15?
okay. Good question. Yeah. Okay. Any somebody else also raised a hand. Yeah.
Dr.
Yes.
Rao, it's me, Pradeep.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao, last year, 2024-25, we rolled out a skill mapping program, using skills metrics. Now,
Okay.
challenges I realized or encountered is, so the first step is job analysis, then job description. So we reached out to the leaders for job description. Now, when it comes to operational leaders, one of the challenges is they don't understand what is competencies, what are skills, knowledge, and all these statements. So it is alien to them. Was
Absolutely.
when we started creating a competency framework, which was subsequently used for the skills mapping.
Mm.
Any specific approach when we are designing the competency framework to be used for development center?
Okay. I think you have raised a very, very pertinent point. In the morning session, we were discussing the biggest problem today is the people who are at the leadership levels who have been maybe the MBAs or the higher education students, let's say some 15, 20 years ago, they would not have studied all this. In fact, even when I went through the MBA, I never studied all this. Obviously, since I'm in the teaching field, I have to acquire all this knowledge, which is contemporary, which we have to give to the students. So one area is first to educate the people, the leaders, how important and how relevant is the competency framework per se compared to the job analysis framework. Job analysis is a sort of a traditional way of doing things, but then we are moving away from there to something more contemporary, which is more useful from the organizational perspective. That awareness, acceptance, and then involvement are very, very important for any transition to happen successfully. That is number one. Number two, I think you should also take, as a leader who is involved in this, should also take one or two instances where you will succeed in implementing this model and demonstrate it to your organization so that others can easily buy. You cannot do it across the organization simultaneously. It's very difficult. You have to make sure which department, which leader is more progressive, more adaptable, more receptive, take him into confidence, to work with him, and then do one or two training programs, do some competency framework based, approaches there, and then show that they demonstrate that it's giving you better results compared to the traditional approaches. Once some champion comes into your fold in your organization to promote this, and the escalate it to different levels is much easier. Then it has a dominoes effect. Other people will also latch onto that. So therefore it's a very tactical approach at the beginning. You need to identify the people who can actually be with you, support you, and make sure that you succeed for their success. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Rao.
Yeah. Okay. So there was some other question, Mr. Rohit. You raised a question, right? You raised a question related to. We lost track of it.
Yes, I'd the number of competencies
Okay. Number of
that are ideally
competencies.
required per role is
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Okay. Well, one is, of course, very clearly, you cannot have too many competencies written. Then it'll be difficult for anybody to monitor. Right. Now, if you ask me whether there are any optimum number of competencies that are to be documented, whether there's any literature support for that, as of now, I don't see much of literature support, right? And therefore, it cannot be said that 5 is good, or 7 is good, or 10 is good. By and large, I think anywhere between 5 to 7 is the maximum that you should look at. And beyond that, it becomes difficult to monitor. Yeah.
Hi, sir. May I ask something?
Yeah. Yeah, please.
I, I've seen there are competency, the time has changed. When you talk about defining competencies as per the KPIs. Now, what happens is people are there who generalize things. Now, for example, I work for a university. Now, I have to define the competencies for the people who are in the technical departments. Now,
Okay.
on these areas, I don't have the subject. I am not the SME, right? So I have to ask the SME to define it for me. Now, what happens is when I ask these people, they give me generalized 5, 10, 20. You ask them to define so many, they'll 10, 15 वो निकाल के दे देंगे. But what happens is out of that 10, 15, you get confused कि इसमें मतलब even the SME doesn't know that कि ये KPI related भी है कि नहीं है. That is because today's management doesn't work like that. You talk about a company and a university, that is the difference which I felt. For example, I'm working for a company. The KPIs are very clearly defined. Even the parameters, it is quantified also. But when you talk to somebody like universities, because people are now getting aware about defining these competencies and making people train on that. But when you, as a consultant, we visit them and we ask them because they have to define the competency. Then we'll have to define the training. So when we ask them, it is usually very generalized. In that case, what can we do?
Okay, I think that's where the role of an expert comes, not the subject matter expert. The expert in terms of designing the competencies is a different skill altogether compared to
Yes.
what. And suppose I'm an engineering college, I'm working in an engineering college as mechanical, electrical, civil, see computer science and all that. So if you go to each one of them, I think first of all they don't understand this long language. Therefore, they'll give you all kinds of vague responses. So you will
Yes.
get confused. Therefore, you will have to employ the services of somebody who is good at designing the competency framework. This expertise is different from having the subject knowledge.
No,
Right. Number two, competencies cannot be generic. You cannot have a set of generic competencies which is not going to work anyway. Right.
yes.
It has to be specific as it is written here. You see this. No, what does it say? Demonstrates, for example, in advance, demonstrates expertise in selling and defines the best sales practices for the department team because you are an advanced one, right? So clear, so specific. So if you have to convert this into, let us say, a professor, no, in universities, if you talk about, you have got assistant professor, associate professor, and professor. So a professor should be able to demonstrate his knowledge in the subject matter, and then he should be able to to demonstrate the best practices for teaching a course in his field. If I am a physics teacher, I may have some best practices for physics. If I'm a management teacher, I have some best practices for management. In management, I may use more of a case study, more of case studies. In physics, I may do more of experiments. In engineering, it may be more of lab related activity. So like that, I think it has to be specific to that particular job role for that particular department. This requires a little more broader understanding of the entire organizational requirements. Just asking a professor to write competencies, yes, you will get 25 30, and that will not lead you anywhere.
Yeah. So in
You
that case,
require
for
some
example,
specialists.
yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. If I am not the technical man, for example, I give you an example. I have to design something for a metallurgy department professors. Now, a metallurgy is something which is out of my touch. I don't know what is metallurgy. Now, I cannot define those KPIs for them. Now, these KPIs, I have to be dependent on the department to give me. Then only I can design the training because I am the training expert. I am not the metallurgy expert. So that was the clash. So then that is why I ask you that how can we work on that?
Okay.
So that is
I will make your solution very simple. So,
yeah.
suppose that I am a metallurgy teacher. I think you don't have to really know the metallurgy subject per se. What you need is at an assistant professor level, what is the level of proficiency that you should have in metallurgy to go and teach in a class, to do research, to do some organizational development work and all. At an associate professor level, how do I scale up from assistant to associate? What are the additional knowledge and skills that I need to possess in terms of being a better teacher at the associate? And at the professor level, what is the professorial level means? You don't have to really know this metallurgy subject as such, but you should be able to specify what are the levels. How do you do that? I think if you take some best well-known metallurgy professors and talk to them, who are the most successful people and who are the average people, what do they do in terms of becoming so successful, and what do they not do for not being so successful? Then you will understand. For example, a professor may publish some 10 papers or 5 papers before he becomes an expert in that matter. Or he may have written a book, or he may have attended so many conferences. He may have, he may be using so many references. Whatever is required to go with that level of proficiency that you can define, that probably will be applicable across all the departments, except in some areas where there are certain lab requirements, right? So
Okay.
this is how, as you can see here, this is very clearly defined set of competencies. You're not defining the subject here. You are not saying that he should be MBA, he should be this, he should be that. You sh- and hence, as we go forward, if you are able to really standardize these competencies and are able to map it back to the job requirements, role requirements, you don't even have to look at the educational qualifications of people. That is the way the world is moving forward. People are not going to look at whether you got the MBA, BBA, or BTech or whatever. If you are able to achieve those competencies through whichever the mode you are able to do it, then you are employable because you can perform in that role, whether it is advanced, beginner, intermediate, or expert, right? I will give you an example of a guy who has been uh, taken as a professor with no educational qualifications, right? So I
Okay.
think, Mr. Singh, you will be able to understand and appreciate this. There's a
Yes.
university, I don't want to name that university, that has
Yes.
taken a person as a professor,
Okay.
and they were paying him better than the professor, the senior most professor of the department. And this guy was just 10th class passed,
Okay.
right? And what is his expertise and what is his knowledge? I don't know. All of you would have known a film called Fly. उसको क्या बोलते हैं हिंदी में? There is a movie where the Fly was the prime actor
मक्खी
and things
मक्खी
like.
मक्खी
Much.
Some picture था. And he was the guy who has done the entire animation for that movie for using that Fly. And
Okay.
he used to charge 3 lakh rupees a day of engagement during the production of that film.
Okay.
And what is his educational qualification? 10th class. And what is his expertise? He could do much better than any PhD in that area.
He's
Right?
practically doing.
Sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So one fine day, he was appointed as a professor in the CSE department, and the whole department was up in arms. All the PhDs in the department said, "How can he be professor? How can he tell us? How can he dictate this, that, and all?" So the top man of the university conducted a meeting, and he said, "Okay, he has just done class, but he has done this. His achievement is this. The movie was a great success, and he has charged 3 lakh rupees per day. He made so much of money. Fine. Now, all of you are unhappy about his appointment. I am giving you a challenge. Any one of you just demonstrate what he has done in that movie. Just demonstrate that you can do. The moment you show me that you are capable of doing it, I'll get rid of him." This is made a statement in his presence.
Okay, that's good.
I don't care about your PhD. I want a competency to be demonstrated on the field. I mean, tomorrow, if my student has to go out and earn a job, I want him to learn the skill, not the theoretical knowledge. So while you may be good at giving theory, but he is the guy who has actually been able to demonstrate what he can do. So therefore, I've taken him. And believe me, it's a very radical decision. In a university system, taking somebody without any formal education as a professor is not a joke. Somebody has to have the guts and courage to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Now that is where the competence comes. He doesn't, if you ask him to teach from a book, he will not be able to. But you ask him to do it, and believe me, what he said was he has learned everything through reading on the Wikipedia. Right.
We've seen this
So
in automobile also.
sorry,
I've seen this in automobile also. We've
possible.
seen a lot of people who are being trained by the mechanics, and they
Yeah.
are the IITs and IIMs, and they're still
Correct.
under those mechanics to actually train them. Those mechanics are
Absolutely.
simply simple graduates and that level, but the skill levels are pretty
I
high.
agree.
They've been doing
I
it.
agree with you. I agree with you. As a mechanical engineer, I studied how to design a carburetor for an engine. But then if something goes wrong with my vehicle, I have to take it to a roadside, chotu who can simply correct
Yeah.
it. They being a mechanical engineer, know how to do it, right? So competencies are different from the knowledge. So competency
Yeah.
frameworks, even in education institution for the teaching community, also you can define the competencies. You can define different levels and implement it. It's just getting a sort of grip on the subject matter.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Right. Right. Okay, thank you. So this is for the sales strategy planning and implementation. These things you can go through later. Now, once you do this, once you're able to create these 4 levels of competencies, then it is a question of development of how do you actually, create the development of the content for them. So build flexibility for each role holder. In fact, before I get into that, let me ask you one simple question. See, I told you the suppose somebody is a beginner or at an intermediate level and you are successful in that role, right? You are pretty successful in this particular role, beginner. And we normally look at the success in your current role and then promote him to the next level. But the next level competencies are different. As you can see here, in the next level, what the competencies that you require are different from the requirement of the previous role. So just because we don't focus on the next role competencies, we just extrapolate this success to here. Extrapolation of success doesn't help. Extrapolation of success doesn't help. What helps you is providing the opportunity for the next role required competencies and then promote the person to the next role is what gives you the success in the organization. A lot of people fail and a lot of organizations make a mistake in success in one role is equivalent to success in the higher role. That is not true. As you can see, the beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert, each level is the competency requirements are different. And if you don't build the competencies before a person is elevated to a new role, it is a sure recipe for that the person's failure, and that ultimately reflects on the organizational failure. I hope I made the point clear. Yeah. Okay. Next is we are looking at the development. So you build flexibility for each role holder to add any other competency that he or she might want to add for their own role, which was in line with their role requirement. So you need to build certain amount of flexibility is what we are advocating. Just give an example, Microsoft Advanced Excel. So link it to one of the job descriptions responsibilities. In fact, the whole industry is today looking at every MBA graduate having advanced Excel expertise. I think most of you must, who are there in the industry, who are in the HR, will be vouching safe for this. You want, whether you are from HR faculty, HR background, or marketing background, or operations background, everybody wants a student to be excellent in advanced Excel, right? So you have to link this to jobs description. And some of the students who join the job, they tell me that, sir, actually you don't really require Excel. They only ask us during the interview process for the selection, but later on they don't use. So you will have to link it properly to the job description's responsibilities to establish a clear linkage between the knowledge that you possess or the skill you possess and how it makes you successful in that role. There's quite a bit of disconnect between what the industry says at the time of recruitment and what actually the kind of a job that you give it to the student after he joins in the organization. Same thing happens even the lateral entry. You take somebody who is working as an assistant manager, as a deputy manager, the expectations of the job roles are not very clearly defined, the competencies are not clearly identified, the skills are not deciphered properly, and finally you end up being a confused employee rather than being a clear employee. So uh, it would not be the MS Excel cannot be a technical competency if somebody doesn't work on using that particular skill. If I am using, say, SAS or MATLAB or SPSS, I don't require that, right? So you need to understand what kind of a skill you expect from from the employee, and ask for that rather than asking n number of things that he or she doesn't need to do on the job. So at the stage of development, this alignment of inputs that you're going to give to the employees to fill the technical competency gap is very, very essential. Otherwise, your L&D will be, sort of ridiculed upon by the people who are going to attend the training programs. And then implementation, introduce TCF in the recruitment phase itself. That is, you assess the technical competencies while taking the people in. Once you take people in and building and the trying to fill the gap and making them aligned with the organizational requirement, is you are doing at your expense. Before recruitment, if you do it, is at the expense of the candidate, right? So it's important that you identify the competencies required for each job role, whether it is in sales, marketing, production, operations, whatever the role that you're looking at, and bring the people who are actually having those competencies, and the gaps are as minimum as possible. So use technical competency framework for promotions and appraisals in the organization. Then you are tying in the organization's goals requirements with those of the individual's aspirations. You tell the people for the promotions and the increments, if you have these competencies, I'm ready to reward you more. But most often the reward is done in our context, in our organizations, for your past performance. Because you've done well in last 1 year, I'll give you something for the future, not knowing very well whether this past performance can be repeated in future in a different role or in a different context, and therefore we have less productivity by the employees. Use technical competencies to identify suitability for the next role. I think this, I've emphasized it quite enough. Therefore, we will move forward. Use technical competencies for creating a learning and development plan for the role holder. This is where, in fact, I know I've been in the industry for 20 years. I have seen the training establishments in the industry, large companies, multinational company. The training programs are done based on some hunch of somebody rather than doing a scientific analysis of the employees' competencies and doing it. Even the training needs analysis is also not done scientifically in many organizations, although they have huge training centers. So that leads you to creating a training program which actually does not pay for your organization's requirements. And finally, what happens is, yeah, at some point, somebody in their assessment, they say the training department or L&D department is not contributing to what the organization needs. If you're able to do, even if you do a training needs analysis thoroughly and align the training requirements based on the training needs analysis, I think you are going to be more successful. And on top of it, if your HR department is able to give the competency requirements for each job role, obviously it is to be given by not by L&D department, HR department has to give. HR department gives you the competency framework for each job role, and then you are able to convert that into using your development center, identifying the gaps. Then you can tailor make the programs in such a way that it will fill the gap of those employees who are aspiring for the next role or higher role. Okay. So then the question is about evaluation. I think all of you must have studied this, the Kirkpatrick model to assess the implementation of training, technical competency framework across the organization, and use performance appraisal data over the last 2-year period to identify improvement in the productivity. So having done this whole thing, how do you prove, how do you establish to your organization that your technical competency framework done through a development center is useful, the L&D's inputs are useful? Take the last year, 2 years performance data of the employee, make a comparative chart, and make an assessment whether the performance of the employee has actually improved or not, whether it is sales or in production or in finance or marketing. Take some KPIs and see how was the performance last 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and now. And if there is a clear demonstration of performance improvement, then you can claim that yes, the training, the technical competency framework is working, the development center is effective, and your L&D department is able to contribute to the improvement in the organizational performance. That is the way you can establish that it is possible. Now, what happens, once you create you have the technical competency framework, you have identified the competencies required, then you make an assessment of the individual competencies in the development center. What happens is you have the desired competencies from the organization perspective. You have the actual competencies of the individual from the on the other side. Then comparing these two, you are arriving at the competency gaps in whether there are 5 competencies or 6 competencies. You can say that in these competencies you are more comfortable. In these competencies the gap is higher, and then these are the areas where you require some improvement in your competencies, and therefore you ask the individual concerned to write an individual development plan. See, the approach here is different from what the TNA approach. In TNA approach, what we say is, okay, you identify the training needs analysis, then you go for design, implementation, and evaluation. That is what we teach. But here in the competency-based approach, what we are advocating is, once you give the report to the individual, the report is shared openly with the individual concerned, and there is a feedback solicited by from the individual. Once it is agreed that these gaps exist, then please tell the concerned individual, please come up with an individual development plan. What does that mean? You identify identifying and pursuing personal goals for professional development. Why is it required? Because the competencies given by the department is in line with the goals of the organization. Competencies identified for the individual is the actual statement of fact. It has to be very objective, scientific, and it cannot be disputed by the individual. Then you have a very nice ecosystem where I am accepting that in these areas I have to develop, and you are giving me an opportunity to develop, and I prepare a plan. Maybe it may take 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever, and I follow the path. The L&D department and the line manager of the organization should support the individual's development plan, and then there is a very, very healthy system where the individual can look forward for his improvement in performance, and over a period of time it creates a culture of performance, it creates a culture of fairness, it creates a culture of success in the organization. So then you set the goals for to learn and improve your important competencies one will need now or in future. So I am now creating a professional development plan for my own growth. My own growth will also contribute to the organization. I am tying this whole thing. It is a strategic approach. You are tying in the individual performance to the organizational performance. Therefore, your entire organization you will be working to elevate the overall performance of the organization. Right? I hope it is coming out clearly in the discussion. So identify individual development plan will have identify your professional goals and motivations. Then all those points one has to go into that. You can read them, and if you have any questions, you ask me.
When we define the IDPs, do we need to give them a growth path in the organization that after doing this, what will they be at? For example, the organization has not defined it, the development plan for the individual. Now, being a trainer, if I'm doing it for them, so they expect, the employee will expect that if I'm talking about an individual development plan, what is the growth I'm going to get? For example, I say that you become X to Y, and your contribution becomes from X level to Y level. Now, after doing this, the employee always expect that, okay, will I do it? What will I get? Now that is a part of IDP, I am sure.
I think that's a much larger philosophical question. See, every individual needs not merely the job and monthly salary. You also need to cater to the employer's growth needs. See, we all have to feel that I'm growing both intellectually and financially and position wise, right? So that's an individual need. And organization needs individuals. So organization should have a perspective plan as to how people will move forward. There must be a human resource planning that is done within the organization, how people will move from one level to the other level. And what you're defining here is what are the set conditions. You have these competencies, you will reach in such and such a time. And the organization also supports you in terms of developing these competencies. For example, I think JP Morgan, I know, is one such organization which gives you the freedom to go and appear for any program anywhere in the world, provided you are able to demonstrate that you're capable of going through those programs and improving your performance. And when you come back, they recognize your additional qualifications or additional skills or additional knowledge, and they reward you. Now, the reward may not necessarily be in terms of promotion. It can be more increments, more recognition within the organization with more responsibilities. It can be some financial reward. The way you want to recognize the employee for these additional competencies, the HR department has to work out the framework how they do it. But then, once you promise, you'll have to fulfill. Otherwise, the organization as an employer loses its credibility, and the organization will lose it will suffer a sort of a employer branding. So if your organization continuously fulfills the commitments to the employees, more and more people will spread the word that this place is a great place to work. But if you don't fulfill that, people will go and spread the word around saying that this organization only sucks. They don't give it back. Therefore, you're suffer. So it's a system where the employee fulfills his part. The organization also has to fulfill its part. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
So it's a part of IDP, right? It's not
Yes.
only the learning, but then the growth also, the employee substantial growth that after some time or whatever, defining the
It's a
growth path is a part of it.
Yeah, it's a development plan. You are giving a handle to the individual. Okay, you write your own future, and you achieve this, I'll give you this. You're putting the onus on the
Okay.
employee,
Okay.
right? So I think it's a much better approach than a boss calling you and say I'm going to promote you or I'm not going to promote you. You are asking me to write my own future, and if I'm able to fulfill this, because this IDP is to be signed, agreed, and signed by the departmental head or supervisor and the individual, and that becomes a document for monitoring my progress. And if I'm able to fulfill my conditions in the IDP, the organization should have no issues in giving back to me whatever I deserve. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything, any other question? So you plan, meet with your manager, all these things are steps, in the process. It's a tedious process. It's time consuming. A lot of thinking has to go into it, and a lot of application of mind has to happen. And it requires consistent approach. Today some manager A is there in a particular role, and he encourages all this. And tomorrow manager B comes and says, "Okay, look, all this is, I don't believe in all this. I'm putting it aside." It doesn't work. It has to be an organized philosophy, the competency framework, competency-based assessments, competency-based, managing the employees has to be top-driven. The top man and the top management has to believe in that. It has to be a kind of a culture of the organization. Competencies are rewarded, competencies are encouraged, competencies are developed. Should be a culture of the organization. It cannot be, switch on and switch off kind of a thing. Does it make sense? All this?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's
Yeah.
the correct time to ask.
No problem. Go ahead.
In the context of HRM, who or which specific HR function or sub-function is ultimately responsible for writing and mapping these competencies across different roles and organizational levels?
Okay. Good question. Good question. See, every organization which is a performing organization, I would call it as, which is uh, interested in retaining its competitive advantage and continue to thrive in the marketplace, should have a very, very healthy ecosystem within the organization for building the employees and their competencies. Now, what is the role and responsibility? Who takes the ownership for this IDP and its implementation? It is primarily the HR department in consultation with the line managers, because who ultimately is the beneficiary of the employees' competencies? It is the line managers. If I'm in marketing, I'm able to build a good marketing team. The marketing manager is the one who gets the benefit of it. HR is an enabler, but the benefit goes to the marketing head. So the marketing manager, in consideration with the HR, has to come up with the kind of competency frameworks that are required for the different roles in the organization. And then they should, either through internal or an external consultant help, should map the competencies of the employees and arrive at the competency gaps. Once you have the gaps, now to establish the competency gaps, you have to refer the employees to the development center. So to that extent, the cost and the consequence of that should be borne by the organization, and the individual should be open and willing to go and get assessed by a development center. Quite often, we find people are not willing to be. They don't like being assessed. Because then you say that I've got 15 years of experience, I have got 20 years of experience, I have done so much great things here. This organization is what it is because of me and all that, but that is all set aside. I think one has to be open and willing to get assessed, because ultimately organization is investing in you for all these assessments, because the organization wants to build you and your career and your progress. So they should get assessed, and then the HR department should refer them to a development center and get the report for the employee. The report will be discussed with the employee concerned, and at an appropriate time they'll have a meeting with the line manager to whom it is reporting, and they will prepare this IDP. Once the IDP is prepared, the IDP has to be referred to the L&D department. L&D department will have n number of IDPs, and each one of them will have certain recommendations for the training or the development of the employee concerned. Now, the L&D department has to create a system of analyzing the competencies to be built and identify the clusters of competencies where certain employees have to be trained in those things. So I may have some, let's say, if it is related to some communication skills, a communication skill may be requirement from various departments, not one department, right? And therefore, I can design a program for building those particular competencies, and then bring all the employees together, depending on the number of people that you want to take in a batch, and say that I'm conducting this training program for improving their competency in that particular area. So there are three departments involved. The HR department is an enabler. The line function is the prime beneficiary and the initiator of this. L&D is the one which will fill the gap. So it's a teamwork of all these people concerned within the organization, and take these training programs forward to reduce the gaps in the employees' competencies versus the competence requirements of the job. Did I answer your question?
Yes, doctor. Thank you. I have another question.
Yeah.
Um, this entire process of IDP,
Mm-hmm.
for a smaller organization, it's understandable. But say for a delivery center, which has about 3 to 4,000 employees, don't you think this would be extremely expensive and cost heavy if I have to put everyone, through a DC?
Mm-hmm.
4,000 people annually through a DC is not going to be feasible, right? Or do we decide that there are only certain roles who will go through a DC?
Okay, good question. Again, everything is related to your budgets and the amount of money that you want to invest in the employees, and therefore, not everyone will be going through the DC. See, you have critical roles and you have potential employees, right? In the human resource planning, we talk about the replacement charts, right? And at a senior level, we talk about succession planning, right? Now, in these two, so you identify the people who you would like to cultivate for assuming the future roles. Development center is for growth of the employee once he is already in the organization, and you cannot develop all the employees together, so you need to have a phased approach and identify the people who are meant for the, maybe let us say, next 2 3 years I want to fill certain roles. And yeah, uh, then you put them into phases. So don't put everyone together. You have to balance between the budgets, your work allocation, and your growth requirements, and that takes forward, right? Done?
Yep, got it now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, great. Wonderful. Awesome. Okay. So this, of course, note your goals, motivations, talents, strengths, and development opportunities, the IDP conversation tool. That's a lofty statement. I think with that, we have completed the second module. Uh, that said, if there are any questions, we can still take, maybe we still have some 2 3 minutes of time. So if you have any feedback, you can also give me, so that for the next class, I can bring in something more for you if you want. Yeah. Is it all sinking in? Whatever we are discussing, is it making you feel more empowered today than the session before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So my request is you just don't leave it here, because you're all busy and working in your own responsible jobs. So take some time off and reinforce whatever you're going through these deliberations, and reinforce them by one reading of some material, either the textbook material or some other material that you are able to lay your hands on, so that it gets registered. You're not doing it for exams or the certificate alone. I think you're doing it for your career and your career progress. So therefore, that's very, very important. All right. Any other point? Any other question?
Sir, one more question.
Uh,
Regarding technical competencies can be defined with the consultation of HODs, department functional HODs. So in case of some behavioral competencies, can it be defined by HR only, or with the?
no, you have to involve the concerned line managers also. See,
Okay.
ultimately, they are your internal customers,
Yes, sir.
right? So you'll have to take the customer into account and understand what their needs are, and better to involve them in writing those competency-related statements, competencies, basically.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Doctor, I have a question. So in this current day and age, how often do you recommend that we should revisit our competency framework and update it?
Okay, I mean, typically most organizations are doing it every 2 years. Once you do a thorough job and start implementing it, people are just the moment the practice in many companies is they revisit every 2 years.
All right. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
And Doctor,
Yeah. Any other?
any
Yeah.
particular company that we should read more about who have been successful in implementing development centers in the context
Okay.
of
So
Indian?
I will pause that question here. In the next session, we will talk more about those companies and how those companies have benefited, who are doing all that. Some examples of Indian companies we will take, not some foreign companies. So that we will take it up in the next session. Yeah. Good. Great. All right. In that case, then, if there are no questions, we will, uh, close the session today, adjourn today, and meet you next Sunday once again. Until then, all of you have a great week ahead. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.